Now, Dying Light 2 recently got a brand new update and DLC, and the game itself is bringing back a lot of players or even gaining new ones, so it's safe to say that they have improved the game over time instead of just letting it go, as back in March 2022 when it released, there were definitely mixed opinions on the game for multiple reasons of the gameplay being boring and rushed, ultimately not portraying what was first advertised. However, as I mentioned, the game has built up a lot of well-received updates, but the biggest one being the latest, and that is the fully loaded update, basically changing the game, now having access to firearms instead of only melees. This means pistols, shotguns, rifles and SMGs, allowing for way more variety in gameplay compared to before. And not just that, they've also added more missions, a new type being the survivor ones, and extra bounty challenges, new items to unlock as well, and enhanced graphics, as well as the free Bloody Ties DLC that comes along with it. So quite a lot added, and it's just that one update. There's been smaller updates and improvements before that, so the game has changed a lot since its initial release over 2 years ago, and this update was for their 2-year anniversary in fact. In other words, I think it's a perfect time to do an updated review on the game, but the thing is, I never played it at launch, and this playthrough was my first, so I do feel like I'm playing the best version of the game. So let's start off with the gameplay, which does follow a very realistic style, and this is because from the moment you start to halfway through to the end, the movement and gameplay differs a lot, as the protagonist Aiden, who I'll speak more about later, starts off with not a lot of strength and isn't that fit to traverse as well as he could be. Therefore, you'll progress through the game and unlock new skills in the skill tree. This could be upgrades to parkour or combat that come with their own points. So combat points will focus on a variety of melee attacks with an awful lot to choose from, making the combat more fun as you play through and not so repetitive. Now, they don't focus on guns as much, as the campaign does still follow the base version of the game, where melee was the priority, so there's no skill upgrades for firearms, but the combat skills also build you defense in terms of blocking and deflecting attacks, as well as your bow, which can be improved. And then switching to the other side, this being parkour points, which, you guessed it, help with parkour and traversing. This could be quicker speed when vaulting and climbing, and softer landing so you don't take as much damage, and then wall running as well, various moves to gain momentum, double jump, etc. There's just tons of upgrades to be made, which completely changes the strength of Aiden compared to when you first start the game. He begins with little stamina and basic moves, but the parkour system overall, it's incredibly realistic and temperamental when you begin, so you'll have to make sure you have enough to hold on to a ledge and time your climbs right to make it, balance with your stamina. Honestly, it's quite hard to describe. You have to feel the parkour movements for yourself. What I'm saying is that it's not like Assassin's Creed, for example, where you'll be dancing around rooftops with the weight of a feather. It's more rustic and natural, but still fun as you play more. It's an area that honestly made me want to play the game, and it's been praised throughout both games. There's additional items and mechanics to also be unlocked to then speed up your movement even more. Again, it's very realistic, so they don't just give it to you right away. You'll have to progress a lot into the story, some a lot more than others, to get access to items like the zipline, grapple and paraglider, etc. And the melee gameplay, with a fair amount of skill upgrades, does run fairly smooth. There were definitely times where I had, maybe just unlocked a new move and it takes a bit of getting used to, but after a while it's just fun to experiment around and make some really fun and unique melee combos on a bunch of enemies. There's the odd bug I did encounter, nothing major, just some clipping issues where there'd be no collision on a character, and that would mean they go through another body or something. But overall, the combat is fast action and always kept fresh, with the freedom really in your hands on how you want to go about taking down a swarm of zombies. The animations are also really unique and of course quite brutal, with heavy and very impactful swings of a weapon to the face as the zombie ragdolls to the ground. They're smooth for the most part, and you don't clearly see when it does switch from gameplay to an animation, if you know what I mean, because for the most part it is a satisfying motion. However, bigger moves like when you block an attack and then jump over a zombie to fly kick another, because it's quite a big move, at times it does feel a little clunky in the animation, but with there sometimes being loads of them on you at once, it's quite difficult for it to not be chaotic. But I thought I'd just mention it, as it can easily take away the immersion for some people, even if it isn't a common issue. And a big aspect I love about Dying Light 2 is the world and the setting. It's of course open world, which is what makes the parkour and traversal system so worthy. You can tell they put so much thought into the world, down to the buildings and where where they're laid out, you'll find yourself parkouring over rooftops in various ways. There's so many different objects like planks and monkey bars, or even more interactive objects that will move you across or something or cushion your fall. There's so much attention to detail with this setting, and with it being post-apocalyptic, it is meant to be messy and sort of filled with almost everything, and this is perfect for a parkour driven world. They could experiment so much with the bunch of methods to get up to places, or for you to perform some really fun chase scenes, and this just makes you not want to fast travel anywhere. They nailed the abandoned theme with realistic moss and the discolour on buildings, with, you know, overgrown roads and bridges, which does show itself in the city areas, and then when you're out in the open countryside, it's actually quite peaceful for once and quite beautiful, to be honest, and they didn't forget about that. You know, it could have been easy for them to put in half the effort with the area outside the cities, but they didn't, and it makes them both equally as good, even though there's such a contrast. And this brings me on to the lighting, in which the mood drastically changes when it starts to get dark, as you'd expect, capturing this eerie theme to the game where it becomes 10 times scarier. The reflections and light rays look so realistic, making it so immersive. Now, as I mentioned, you'll have many moments where you'll visit rooftops, and you'll come across ones that have old shelters on top of them, which basically give you access to free loot with potential rare items and materials. They work great as a pit stop and give you more of a reason to parkour around these higher places and explore. That's if you weren't doing it in the first place. And another aspect that makes the game feel even more immersive is the NPCs themselves, whether that be zombies or humans. Each area is fairly populated. Of course, in the urban areas they'll be more common, and it sounds ironic because it's pretty much the end of the world, but the setting has so much life to it, where you'll always be bumping into these NPCs that you can always interact with and have conversations, the human ones that is. Lastly, I'd like to cover the story and narrative of the game, where you'll follow the protagonist Aiden Caldwell, who I quite liked as a character. In fact, I did see many complaints about how he isn't strong enough because of his, you know, slow reflexes, and there's moments where he doesn't see something clearly about to happen, but I think this is what makes him so human and natural. Many games have their protagonists have little to no emotion and make them a god basically, which ties in so well with the gameplay itself, where, as I mentioned earlier, you'll start off fairly basic in strength, but it does build up over time. I also think Jonas Scott, who did the voice, did an amazing job. That sort of goes unnoticed. If anything, you're quite limited in a first person game, but the emotion at times he portrays I found great, and this world, but the main focus being the city of Villador, which is one of the last inhabited cities. It's basically about to end. The infected have now taken over, but like many games of this world, there's other factions that want to now take ownership of this land and have all the power. I mean, it was the same in the last game I reviewed, Far Cry New Dawn. Now, to help counter the infected, there's UV light stations, as well as a flashlight which does stun and kill infected if they're in the proximity. So the world is in chaos, but Aiden's main goal through all this is to find his long lost sister Mia, who he'd been separated from for 15 years. Now, the special aspect about Aiden is that he has access to special abilities, and this is after being experimented on years ago, just before he was separated from Mia. It sort of means he has the power and more of a chance to save the city, but the game also heavily focuses on choices and the type of person you want to be. This means helping other people and factions along the way as you find Mia and uncover the truth. It's a good concept. I wouldn't say it's anything we haven't seen before, and it didn't blow me away, but overall this, I believe the main aspect of the game is the gameplay, and I think that's where I end my review of Dying Light 2 in 2024. I ended up really enjoying the game and exploring its world. Now, I never played it at launch, so I can't base it on my own experiences, but I can guarantee you that the game is way better now, and you'll enjoy it more this time if you did play it back then, and if you haven't played it at all, then now is the best time too. So if you did enjoy this video, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy single player and story driven games, then that's what this channel is all about. I have a bunch of reviews on various titles with a playlist of the series I've done in the description, and if you'd like to support the channel by becoming a member at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to many perks, then click the join button below, or there'll also be a link in the description. Thank you all for the support and watching until the very end. That was Dying Light 2, and bye bye.